it is.
Thank you, Norman Taylor. Wow, that's awesome. So this morning, I will start this message with a reading and a powerful passage. Then I'm going to read another passage that is very powerful to back that one up. And then I'm going to tell a story that goes in line with that message, so that we really get this message today. We get glimpses of it, or we just embody the whole thing. At our level of understanding, we're going to get this today. So 3 different things, all saying the same fundamental, critically important, life-transforming spiritual truth. In fact, they are all teaching us the single most important spiritual truth for each of us to really deepen into, to really get. Because when we get this principle, when we really get it and embody it and live from it, it is the ultimate leap off of the fence onto the side that says yes. It is a definitive line in the sand that allows us to walk through our lives fearlessly. So today really is a continuation of the last 2 weeks. And so the first reading is from Science of Mind, Dr. Ernest Holmes. And what I am about to read, Holmes really means. He writes it in so many different ways throughout the textbook. There's just not too many ways to hear it. And you know that he really means it when the word is all in caps. This one is. He writes, "There is one mind by which we think, one spirit which we live, one body of which we are a part, and one light that lights everyone's pathway. One spirit, one mind, one substance, one God, in whom we all live, and one law, which we all use." The one is in caps. One. So the infinite must be one. And he's still writing this. The infinite must be one. There is only one. For there cannot be 2 infinite beings. Whatever change takes place must take place within this one. And he shares this point, as I said, over and over again. Like only Ernest Holmes, if you've read the book or read any of these books, only the way he can write it. And I love reading over and over again Ernest Holmes. It never gets old. It is always fresh and new because he's speaking truth. And so then, lest we forget that there is nothing other than the one, and it is the one that we put our complete faith in. Complete, remember that, not 70%, not 80%, but 100% faith. Because until we have that 100% faith, we're sitting on that fence. We're sitting on that fence, and we need to be either in or out. And stop messing with Mr. In Between, which is, as we know, an old-time song. But it's time. It's time. The time is, it really is. The time is now. So do we believe it 100% or not? Do we believe it? Because when we do 100%, then life takes on a whole new meaning. A whole new meaning. Now, I know it's easy to just sit here and say yes, but to really live it, to really believe it, we're going to explore that a little bit deeper this morning. And now we go back a couple of thousand years, and there have been teachers over and over again speaking the same spiritual truth. Thousands of years to the Tao Te Ching. Because it says in the Tao the same thing, that there is only this oneness. And the Tao Te Ching is the entire Taoist philosophy of life in 81 verses. It took Ernest Holmes over 600 pages to get this across to us in his way, And it's basically saying the same thing. But the Tao says it in 81 verses. And some of the verses are only one sentence long. I'm ordering that book for our book table too, because I think it's really a really important book for us to have in our libraries. So in the Tao then, there's one sentence, but here it is. The world is nothing but the glory of the Tao expressed through different names and forms. One who sees the things of this world as being real and self-existent has lost sight of this truth. It's more than one sentence. To him, every word becomes a trap, and everything becomes a prison. But one who knows the truth that underlies all things lives in this world without danger to him. Every word reflects the universe, and every moment brings enlightenment. The individual who knows the truth that underlies all things can live in a world without danger. And what is the truth? What is the truth that underlies all of these things? There is only one. It is the ultimate truth. There is only one. There is only the glory of the Tao. Nothing but the glory of God expressed in and through and as you. Different names, possibly, we call this one energy. Different forms, but it's all this one. There is nothing that exists outside of it. One spirit, one mind, one substance, one life, one God. And it makes all the difference to us in the world then, to have 100% faith that we truly believe. There's this unified field of oneness, and it underlies everything. Because if we understand that there is only one power, not just conceptually, but understand that there really, really is one power in operation, we can do something really, really radical. We can walk through life, and no matter what befalls us, we understand who the giver is. And if we understand who the giver is, we can stay open when it comes. And that is a reality that is vastly different from probably the way we were taught or brought up. They would have us living in a dark place, a dark and dangerous world. And sometimes it looks like that. And around every corner, harm can befall us. So what do we live in? We live in the fear. We live in this fear. And we hear a million times. And we hear a million stories. Everyone has a story, am I right? Yeah. The news has stories. Everything has stories for you to scare, to live in the fear. But when I was at the 2013 affiliated New Thought Network conference, Anson Conference, one of my favorite speakers, and I love her, I've seen her in New York, she's in Florida now, but August Gold, phenomenal. Just, I love this woman. And she told this story, so I'm going to channel a little of August Gold here this morning, because it's so powerful. And it's the story of a woman who lived in downtown New York City on the Lower East Side. And one ordinary night, she walked into the vestibule of her apartment building and went to the mailbox. They're in these little metal slots, and got the key out and was turning her mailbox slot to open it, flip open the box. And all of a sudden, a big, burly stranger crashed through the doors, grabbed her and hurled her to the floor, to the ground in a corner. And we read stories like this all the time, do we not? Something bad, something unexpected and unwanted comes crashing through the door. Nobody wants something like this to happen to them. And we certainly do not wish it on anyone else. But there she was, on the ground, crouching in fear. And who would not be? There isn't anyone in the room, myself included, who will not be instantly gripped by terror. Scary thing. And we sit in rooms like this, and we say we believe there is only one. But how could we respond then in these kinds of moments? And it is in that moment, in that very moment, that we get to decide what one really means to us. What does it really mean when we're in those moments of gripping fear? Because we never know when a moment like that is going to show up. And now we never know exactly how it would, and how we are going to be shoved in a corner by a big, scary stranger. But life comes at us sometimes, suddenly, without warning. Anyone ever experienced that? We can definitely get shoved. That's what it feels like. As August Gold was telling the story, and this was a story that was told to her by one of the members of her then congregation. So it's kind of a true story. So she said, August Gold said, and when it comes to us, at us like this, we have to know who comes calling, whose hand is pushing us, whose hand is knocking on the door. If we don't know, we will never ever have peace of mind. That not a peace of mind that will allow us to open the door with any kind of certainty, knowing that what is knocking on our door has our name on it, knows our name by heart, and is calling specifically for us in this experience. And whose hands pushed her down? That's a radical question to ask. A lot of people would take offense to a comment like that. But if there is only one power, one presence, one God, and if I am and everything is nothing, as the Tao says, but the story of the Tao, the oneness, if everything we see, if everything that exists is this one power and presence that we already are, then the very hand that seems to be pushing us down is our very own hand. It is our hand that's doing the pushing. Now, who wants to think? Who wants to think that somebody would bring such a thing upon themselves? But here is where our teachings come in, and here is where our teachings can transform our life. We look with our human eyes, and we see her on the ground. And we see ourselves after being let go from a job, or in a doctor's office, as Melissa was talking about, getting a diagnosis, dealing with something we cannot believe that we have to deal with. And with our limited perspective then, if we do not understand what one really means, then we look with our human eyes and say, oh my God, look at how awful this is. Look what happened to me. Isn't it awful? And everybody will agree with us. It is awful. But if there is one power, if there is one power and one presence, and you are it, and it is you, if everything is nothing but the glory of the Tao, called by different names, if all of life is a movement toward our enlightenment, as we talk about, what is our enlightenment? Other than the realization of our wholeness, the realization of our perfection, the realization that we are truly great and everything that takes place is contributing to our growth in this oneness. If we don't know that, if we don't know that all of life moves us toward our growth, we will think that life is happening to us and not really understanding the truth that life is happening for us. Just changing that one word changes everything. Life is happening for us. It is happening for our own development. We are being grown and cultivated and nourished and sustained in every single thing, without exception. There cannot be God and. No exceptions. No exceptions of being pushed down by this man in the foyer. Not the exception of me walking out of a 42-year relationship in the middle of the night. No exception. No exception. That for my whole life, I've had to deal with addiction in one form or another. No exception. It's all happening for me. A movement to our wholeness. A movement to our wholeness. Everything that comes to us, everything that happens to us, everything bar none, isn't happening to us as it is happening for us. Just that slight shift makes all the difference in the world, in our thinking, in our lives, in our experiences. She is crouching on the floor, in the ground, in the vestibule. Every person's worst nightmare. And something hits her. And this is why we study. This is why we come together. This is why we take classes. This is why we do the spiritual work. For a moment, we are crouching on the ground in the middle of an experience we don't yet understand, but we know it is for us. Whatever the experience, it is for us. And then she said to herself, you know, I've spent my whole life crouching. Everything that has ever happened to me, I've taken this pose. In every relationship I've had, I'm always defending myself and crouching in fear. Today is the last time I crouch. That's it. And she stands up, literally stands up in her truth, physically and in her truth. She stood up based on the truth that there is one power, that there is one presence, that there is just one. And this is when all the caps come in really handy. This is one, the big one, the only one that exists. And in these moments, you have to stand up. And you can't know it 80%. You can't know it 90%. You have to know it 100% that there is only one. There is only one power that sustains us, that is behind us, that protects us, that leads us on. And when we get in those situations where it really feels like we're all alone, like walking out of the house at 3 a.m. and not knowing where I was going, but knowing that there was one power that was there to not only protect me and sustain me, but lead me into a greater experience of my life, because life is for us. So the only way that we get to pick a side, you've got to get off the fence. That fence, a proverbial fence, and pick which side. She did this. She picked one. She stood up. For the first time in her life, she stood up in a situation that was probably the scariest one she ever went through. And because what most people would tell you, that stay down, just throw your bag at him, don't get up, whatever you do, stay down, and hope he runs away. And she stood up. She stood up. And she was so certain of what this meant for her that she turned right to this Goliath of a guy and did something preposterously counterintuitive. She went charging towards him. And she couldn't believe what was happening. And he turned around and he couldn't believe it either, because here she was chasing him out of the building and down the street. True story. She was absolutely crazy. Crazy, right? Crazy. Because she was living in a world without danger. At that point, there was no danger. She was standing in her truth. The instant she understood that her own fingerprints and the fingerprints of Spirit itself were on this situation, and something wasn't happening to her, something was happening for her. And Charles Fillmore says, this path is about following God all the way home. And we think, what a pretty concept. It sounds real good, doesn't it? So nice. Let's follow God all the way home. This is what is meant, though, by following God all the way home. It means to stand up in the middle of a real-life metaphor. Then you're following God home. You're standing up in your worst fear and knowing that there is no danger in God. So she takes this experience, and it becomes a stepping stone for her to get to the next level in her life. It makes her much more courageous than she's ever been before. It makes her the woman she was absolutely meant to be, that she never really knew existed. She revealed to herself her true self. And she takes this and parlays it into a new life. So what does enlightenment mean then? What did it mean? It means that every single thing that happens to us, as we understand this one power and presence, in answer to our prayer, it is to grow us into the people we were born to be. We were not born to live in fear. We were born to express life. That's what we were born to do. We dare. Do we dare to be our greatest that we can be? Do we dare? And even if we're afraid, dare anyway. You got to love this path that we're on, this spiritual teaching. I love it. It's so incredibly powerful. It's very bold. Not for the weak of heart sometimes. And it is transforming. It is transforming when you enter into these teachings and understand that all the great teachers of our life that have gone before us have said this, the same exact thing. There is one life. There is one love. There is one power. And all of life is a movement within us toward our greatness, toward our perfection, our wholeness. And that, my friends, is what being in the one and with the one truly means. And so it is.